Hey guys, here's a new video on sugar gliders. It's just me introducing them to you. I have 4 in total, and also I want to tell you a bit about how I introduced them to each other because I didn't buy all 4 at once. Actually, I didn't buy them all. So just keep on watching. I'll just dive right into it. So the first one, I'm going to take my treats first because I want to show them to you. So the first one I will take out, let's see, who will we take out? Is little Nala. Come on out, baby. Come on out. Ooh, yes. Very good. So this is Nala. She's very shy. And she's a bit over 1 year old. She has a twin sister, Daisy, and I got them as 4-month-old babies, and they're both really shy, not very friendly, but they accept me, so to speak. And little Dobby wants to come out right away. So I got her and her sister. They were my first sugar gliders. I bought a pair because you shouldn't buy just one. And they were not really socialized. They were very scared and very insecure at first, but they're warming up really nicely. Just wait a moment and then you come out too. And yeah, this is her, and she's a bra baby, so I'm going to put her inside of the bra. Oh, there you go. So I guess I have to skip to Dobby first because he's very active every time I wake him up. So this is little Dobby. He's 13 years old and he's almost a rescue, not quite. His owner gave him to me because Dobby lost his cage partner, his brother, and was getting really lonely and really sad. So I got him, and he has adapted really well. He likes his new home and he likes his new friends very much, and he's very playful. Oh, and there we have Oreo already. Okay, so this is Dobby's favorite place to be, so I'll just put him in here to play while I talk. I see Oreo is helping himself to the treats. So this is Oreo. He's my only glider that's not a standard. He's a mosaic and he is around 5 months old. And he's my last purchase. A very friendly glider. He's been well socialized as a joey, and I really enjoy spending time with him. I enjoy spending time with all my shuggies, but he's really, really sweet, and I love that about him. So I'll have to say I love them all just the same, even if they're not as friendly. So Dobby and Oreo are really, really friendly, but Daisy and Nala still need more time to socialize, to be socialized, and I don't want to push them into it. I just do it on their own terms. And the last one I have is little Daisy, and Daisy is very vocal at times. Good. But she's getting there, she's getting friendlier, and she's Nala's sister, twin sister. So Daisy and Nala I purchased from a breeder over here, and they've come to me a year ago. And they are both bra babies. This is the only way that I can really keep them on me if they're in my bra. And they only want to come to me on their terms, so I can't really force them because then they'll get really vocal. So the first 2 I've got, as I said, were Daisy and Nala, and I've had them for about 8 months. I didn't really plan on purchasing a 3rd standard sugar glider, the classic color. And I really didn't want to purchase an old one or even have an old one because, well, if they've lived for so many years, then they're not going to live for much longer. But then I saw an ad in a forum and someone was looking for a new home for his sugar glider, and I promised I would help him find a new home, but I didn't want to keep him. And because I was very unhappy with the people that came out to us and wanted to take him in, I decided that I'd rather keep him myself than just let him go to someone who doesn't know how to care for them. So I took Dobby in this summer, and at first he really didn't like me, but that's normal because he didn't know me. And I took him to the vet and I had him neutered because I didn't want any babies. And then I slowly started introducing him to the girls. One of them is crawling on my back right now. Anyway, so the first thing I did, I separated my cage into two, because if you've seen my cage tour, then you know that I can separate it. I have a divider, and I put a blanket all over the divider so that they couldn't reach each other. They could only smell each other and hear each other, but they didn't see each other, and I was really scared that they might be aggressive towards each other, so I didn't want them to be able to grab through the cage bars. So that's where the blanket came in, and I kind of sped up the process with Dobby because he was really lonely and sad, and I couldn't bear seeing him like that. So I let him inside of the cage on his own for a couple days, and then I think after about a week I started introducing them, and it went really well. The first thing I did was cleaning the whole cage. Then I separated it into two, and I added a couple of the things that Dobby came with. He came with his coconut, and it was full of stuff from his old cage. So I let that in because I just didn't want to put him in a completely new environment. He was scared already as it was, and he was still very sad. His mood lightened up a bit when he heard other sugar gliders, but he got progressively worse when he noticed, or when he realized that he's not getting near them. So after going to the vet and having him neutered, I also had all of them tested for parasites. And after the results came out fine, I decided that I would repeat the tests after 30 days as is recommended. But I couldn't bear look at him. He was so sad, and he didn't want to play, and he didn't want attention and anything. And I decided after about a week maybe that I would just risk it. I didn't care for anything because I didn't want him to die on me that fast. So I put him in the bathtub together with the girls, and they loved each other. It was love at first sight. Daisy was very happy with him. She was very happy to see him. So Nala also likes him and enjoys spending time with him, but Daisy and Dobby, they're like inseparable. So that's how I did it with them. It was really easy because Dobby was lonely, and he has been alone for about 2 months, I think, before he came to me. So it wasn't really that difficult to introduce him to a new environment and to new friends. He was the alpha male of the cage where he comes from, so there wasn't a problem for us because I didn't have a male, and the risk of anyone fighting was really low. So I have to say I got really lucky with him because usually it lasts a while longer until they get along and they could fight. And initially Daisy was very happy with him, but after a week or so she got really fussy and she didn't like him as much anymore, and they still have these days where they don't really get along, and she's just crabbing at him and wants to be left alone, but it's just little spats, they're not really fighting. Then I kind of gave up hope for ever finding a colored sugar glider that I could actually afford. And also I was thinking about Dobby because it would be risky introducing him to a new sugar glider because of his age and him being used to being the alpha male. I was kind of scared that they would fight. I've had Dobby for about 2 months when Oreo came into the picture. I found an ad online and I really couldn't afford it, but I just wanted to ask how much the breeder wanted to have for him. So I've got to talking to her and we had a little chat, and then she said that if she would come to my house and see the setup and see how I cared for them, then we could talk about the price, so to speak. She made me an offer. And then that's how I got Oreo. The problem was Oreo was a male and he was intact. He was still a baby, but he was a male. And I knew that that would become a very big problem eventually, because you shouldn't keep males with females if males are intact. That very often goes very wrong. It doesn't have to, but it's very probable. So Oreo came and he was really friendly, and then she wanted to see how he got along with the other guys, and I didn't really want to do it because I just wanted to make sure that he was as healthy and that mine were still healthy. I wanted to take them to the vet for a checkup before I did any introductions, because either mine could have gotten sick and could pass something on to him, or even the other way around. You can never know. But still, I let them have a sniff at each other, and Dobby was really aggressive towards him. Oreo was still a little baby. He still is very small. And he didn't like him at all. And as soon as he smelled Oreo on me, he just bit like crazy. He was so aggressive, and he bit me bloody many, many times. And Dobby is really friendly and not aggressive at all, with me at least, but he was really aggressive towards Oreo because he smelled like a male, I guess. So I had a cage separated, of course, again, because I still needed to do the proper introductions and I wanted to be ready. And the first thing I have done is kept Oreo in one cage and the other three in the other cage. Then I went to the vet the next day or 2 days after. I've had an appointment already. I had him neutered as well. I don't want to breed sugar gliders, I just like to keep them. So I had him neutered, and then I also had him tested for parasites. I also took samples of feces from the other gliders, and I had them all four tested. A couple days after starting introductions, they could smell each other through the cage bars, but there was this blanket in between, and Dobby and Oreo used to fight a lot through the blanket. It was just very loud at night. So the first one I introduced to Oreo was Nala, because she's the sweetest of the girls, and I was pretty sure that it would be a good match, and it was, thankfully. I didn't want Oreo to be lonely for too long, but then again I repeated the whole fecal test after 30 days anyway, just to make sure. So I just put them in the same pouch, and they were really happy about it, and they got along really well. So at that point I decided that I would keep them 2 and 2 until introductions were finished. And you have to be aware when introducing a new sugar glider to a colony or even another sugar glider, they might not get along. Sometimes it takes a week, sometimes it takes a month, and sometimes it doesn't work at all. So that's how that works. But thankfully it worked for us. Nala was in the cage with Oreo, Dobby was in the cage with Daisy, and then I started swapping cages and swapping cage pouches. You don't have to do both, you can just swap the cage, so just take one group out of the cage and put it in the other cage and vice versa. But I liked to do it like if I changed their cage, if I swapped their cage, I would want their normal pouch to be in there so that it smelled like them. Or I like to just change the pouches so that they could just smell each other while sleeping. But it's really, I think it's sufficient if you simply take them out of the one cage and put them in the other, and just do that back and forth every couple days. I also didn't clean the cage as much during that time because I wanted to smell like all of them. It didn't smell nice. I hated it, and I hated the way my cage looked. I'm going to try to insert a picture of it somewhere in this video just so you can see how it looked like with the divider. It just wasn't as pretty, and since it's in my living room, I was really bummed out by that. But that's what you gotta do. So then I did that for a while, and the thing was, I kept fighting through the blanket a lot every night. and they weren't stopping. So I was a bit worried that I might have to leave them like that, separated into two cages, because if they don't get along, then what can you do? So a while after I've introduced Nala to Oreo, I started introducing Daisy to him as well. I just put her inside of the cage in the evening to play a bit before I put her back to Dobby, or I would just let them sleep together during the day, just not for too long, because I didn't want Dobby to be alone for too long. And then Dobby was still very aggressive, and whenever he smelled Oreo, he was just really mean and bit me bloody as always, and was like, nope, I don't want that near me, I don't want that scent. There you go, here's another one. Okay, so I introduced Daisy to Oreo as well, so I knew that the trio got along really well, and the only problem was Dobby and Oreo. So a while after introductions worked with the two girls and Oreo, I wasn't making any progress with Dobby and him, and Dobby was really aggressive whenever he smelled him on me and still kept biting me, and Oreo started biting me too when he smelled Dobby on me, so they were really, really hating each other. The fights through the blanket continued, of course, as well, and I just didn't give up. I continued with the swapping, and I did that for around 6 to 7 weeks. At that point, Oreo stopped smelling like a male, I think, because he's been neutered for 6 to 7 weeks. And also he started smelling like the colony, like Daisy and Nala, and Dobby was used to Daisy and Nala. So he started smelling more like the colony and less like his old cage. And that's when the fighting stopped. They stopped fighting through the cage bars. So after the fighting stopped, I just watched them closely for around a week. And I noticed they stopped fighting altogether, so there wasn't any fussing through the divider or anything. And that's when I decided that it would be time to introduce them. So I had a day off, and I started by cleaning the entire cage completely. I cleaned the cage cover, I removed the cage set, I replaced it with a clean one. I replaced all the toys, and I thoroughly cleaned the cage and the wheels. And I wanted it to smell as neutral as possible. Then I took them and I took a clean pouch and I put them in the bathtub. And I'm going to insert a video of that as well. Because I actually filmed them, and I was hoping that they wouldn't fight, because that would have been bad. But I put them all in the bathtub, and thankfully they were all very happy with each other, and they started clicking. They started making clicking noises, I call it popcorning, and they just got along really well. They slept in the same pouch. They just went all to sleep in that pouch, and they were there for around, I don't know, I left them in there for around 10 hours, and there was no fighting, no crabbing, no nothing. And then I just decided, okay, I'll take the divider out completely and put them inside a cage. And I had the travel cage on standby just in case, because I was afraid that maybe they would start fighting during the night. And I'll be honest, I slept next to the cage not only that night but also that night, and I followed everything really close. Thankfully there weren't any incidents. They were all getting along really well, and they still are. So sometimes him and Daisy have little spats because Daisy is very moody at times. Oh, you're biting me. But all in all, they get along really well. So things you should watch out for when you introduce your sugar gliders is, first of all, you have to make sure that they will probably not fight. And also, when you introduce them, you want to closely follow them and make sure that they don't fight when they're introduced to each other. There can be some bickering when they are being introduced, but the most important thing is that while they do bicker, you don't want them to bow up, because if they do that, then they're really fighting, and that's really bad, and you have to separate. If that happens, you just have to start again. You take them out, you separate them, and you do the same thing over and over with introducing and cage swapping and all of that. But if that doesn't happen, and luckily it didn't happen to me, then you're good to go. So I've had them together for about a month now, and Dobby and Oreo, they hated each other so much. They hated each other with a passion. Now they're really good friends, and now they both wake up a bit earlier than the girls, so I usually take them out to play with them about 1 hour before the girls even wake up. And they're always together, and they share their snacks, and they like to play with each other and chase each other through the cage. And it's all friendly, and we never have problems with it, thankfully. So it was a really successful introduction, and I'm really happy that I can make a video about it and tell you guys about it, because maybe you have some problems introducing your sugar gliders to each other, and maybe this video will help. So I want to add a couple basics to introducing sugar gliders at the end of this video, just so you know. Okay, so the first and most important thing is that you have to be prepared for introducing sugar gliders if you only buy one, because you shouldn't keep them alone. They always should be kept at least in pairs or more, though I have to say that it's really difficult to stop at 2. I'm not even sure 4 is my final number. I might still get some more, but for now I'm happy with 4. You want to get ready for introductions, or you can purchase a pair from the beginning as I have. But still, if you want to introduce a new one, just make sure that you follow the rules, that you do the cage swapping. And if they're really aggressive towards each other and you can't separate the cage, because mine is built that way, that you can actually separate it into 2, then keep the cages, first keep a distance between them, and then put them closely together each night. Let them see each other maybe, don't have to. And then do the same thing that I have done. Start with cage swapping and slowly introduce them to each other. So the second thing you want to do when introducing is keep the quarantine, especially if you're not sure where your sugar glider comes from, the new one. And before starting quarantine, you have to take all of the suggies to the vet and have them checked. And also make sure that they do fecal tests and make sure that none of them have any parasites. And then if you want to be extra careful, then after 30 days you want to repeat the fecal tests just to make sure that nothing has developed in the meantime, because some parasites can be dormant and it will take a while for them to develop, and then even if the first fecal tests came out clean, the second one might not. So even if I didn't keep the strict regime of 30-day quarantine period, I did repeat the fecal tests, and thankfully they were all okay and they were all very healthy. But other than that, make sure that you have a neutral place when you introduce them to each other, and everything has to be neutral. The place, the pouch, the new pouch, and the new cage after you've introduced them. So I used the water and a couple of drops of essential eucalyptus oil to clean the cage. And as I said, I put new clean toys inside of the cage that I have also thoroughly cleaned before adding them to the cage. The only thing remaining in the cage were the stealth wheels. And other than that, everything was new, from the cage set to the pouches and everything. Now that I've told you the story of how I introduced my Shuggies to each other, there's still a list I have written of the most important things that you have to keep in mind when purchasing a new sugar glider for your existing colony or even for your lonely glider. So the first thing you have to keep in mind is the size of the two sugar gliders, because you don't want them to be one really small and one really big. If you want to introduce a joey, just make sure that the joey is of an appropriate size before doing the introductions, because the last thing you want to do is go to the vet with an injured glider because it was too small. Age is not important. As I've told you, I managed to introduce Dobby and Oreo, and they are 13 and Oreo was like 4 months or 5 months, and it worked out very well. I was very happy with it. It might be that if they are of similar age, they might get along quicker. What does matter is the gender of the sugar gliders. If you have a female, it's best if you pair her with another female. If you already have a female and you want to introduce a male, just make sure that the male is neutered before you introduce him. Otherwise, you will have joeys, very probable. Also, intact males have a very strong smell to them. When Dobby came to us, he was a 13-year-old male and he was intact, and his smell was really strong. It was really strong. I really wouldn't have managed to stomach it for too long. So keep that in mind. Also, if you have two males that are intact, they will also smell much worse even. You do not want to add a second intact male to a breeding pair or a colony, because that's not going to end up well. Usually when there are females involved, they will fight a lot. If they're brothers and they are intact, they will probably get along really well for the rest of their lives. But as soon as females are introduced, it's not going to be that much fun anymore, because the males will have competition and they will start fighting. So keep that in mind as well when purchasing a new sugar glider. If you want to purchase a male, make sure to neuter him before you introduce him to your new cage. It's important that you have two separate cages, or that you can separate the cage you already have into two halves without them being able to reach for each other. When you introduce them, you want to do it on neutral territory. So you can use the bathtub for that, for example, or you can use a new cage if you have one. Just make sure that the territory where they get to meet each other for the first time is unmarked by any of the gliders involved. Avoid food when introducing them. You don't want them to fight over food, you just want them to get to know each other. It's best if you introduce them in the morning when they are still very sleepy. You should probably let them go to sleep and then a couple hours later take them out and start introductions. If you're noticing that it's not working out, then don't force it. Just give them more time, do some more pouch swapping, and try again later. You want to think of the safety of your sugar gliders first, and everything else comes after that. After successful introductions, don't forget to keep an eye on them the following nights. Also, when they have moved into their new cage, you want to have more than one feeding station ready for them, just in case one is food protective and stops the other from eating. The first couple nights after introductions, you don't want to add too many toys to their cage, because you want them to be interested in each other and not in the toys around them. Also, you will want to add a couple of cage pouches to their cage after successful introductions, just in case they don't want to sleep in the same pouch. I personally like to leave at least 2 sleeping pouches for them, because sometimes one of them is moody and he or she will just decide that today is the day where I want to sleep on my own. If you're noticing during introductions that they are starting to fight and bow up, then don't let them fight it out. Make sure you don't mix a teenage female with an intact adult male, because teenage pregnancies and gliders usually end up in death. Another thing that you can do during introduction period is that you use two bonding pouches, and you have the one glider in one pouch and the other glider or gliders in the second pouch, and just have them close to each other so that they can smell each other and that they can hear each other. And maybe you want to carry them around like that, that's also a possibility. Or even you can purchase bonding pouches with two different compartments, and you can have them in the same pouch basically, but they don't have the ability to touch each other or to grab each other or to hurt each other. So this was my video on introducing sugar gliders to each other, and you also got to know my sugar gliders. Most of the information you can also find online, but I know that many people just like to watch videos instead. Hopefully this video was helpful for you, and I hope that your sugar gliders will be as easily introduced to each other as mine. I wish you good luck, and comment if you have any questions, comment below the video. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you want to see more videos on sugar gliders. Thanks for watching. Bye!